May I begin by thanking all participants in the debate this evening. This is a vital debate which affects the future of us all. And I'm proud to support the motion that nuclear weapons have no place in 21st century Britain. Nuclear weapons were the product of what was probably the most tragic period of human history, the Second World War. And we've heard eloquently of the human consequences of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And as a result of those terrible catastrophes, we have indeed seen human efforts to reduce and control nuclear weapons stockpiles. And with some effect, we've seen laws passed, we've seen treaties, and we've seen bilateral reductions as the result of the common sense of politicians internationally. We've also seen the majority of the world covered by nuclear weapons-free zones, and we've seen that some nuclear weapons states have voluntarily given up their arsenals. But of course, the need to fully eradicate nuclear weapons remains, because, as Henry Kissinger, that great Cold Warrior himself, has recently said, the world is too dangerous now for nuclear weapons to remain. And of course, let's remind ourselves that nuclear weapons possession is a minority sport. 8, maybe 9 nuclear weapon states exist in this world. 190, perhaps, the remaining states wish to see nuclear arsenals banned and decommissioned. Now, with the forthcoming vote on whether or not to replace Trident in this Parliament, we have a huge opportunity for change, and we have an opportunity for Britain to give a lead. Now, we've heard some of the legal and moral arguments which underpin some of the issues around nuclear armaments. But of course, the key question which most people want to have answered is, do we need them? Do we actually need nuclear weapons for our safety and security? And for answer to that, I turn to the wisdom of our Defence Secretary, Philip Hammond, who just a few days ago said, commenting on the North Korean missile test, he said, North Korea seemed to think possessing a nuclear weapon makes them safe. In fact, it's the opposite. Having a nuclear weapon makes them a target. Exactly so. Having Trident makes us a target. So what security threats do we face? Again, I'll turn to the wisdom of this government for their national security strategy published towards the end of the last year, where they identified Tier 1 threats to our security: terrorism, climate change, pandemics, cyber warfare, those issues that we recognized as real contemporary threats to our nation and to our environment and to our world. State-on-state nuclear threats were Tier 2 threats for the second time in a row following the 2010 National Security Strategy of the coalition government. But unfortunately, in spite of what I think is an outstanding national security strategy, in an example of unjoined-up thinking, the government then remains committed to an £183 billion spend on Cold War White Elephant WMDs, and that figure is based on the figures in the SDSR, including the contingency fund, and the figures given by Mr. Dunn to Crispin Blunt, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. Not surprisingly, we see some senior military, some senior military opposition where they are concerned about the opportunity cost of nuclear weapons when it comes to conventional weaponry. They want military kit that they can use. Now, there is a big risk from developing technology, and we heard about this first from Lord Des Brown, former Labour Defence Secretary at the end of last year, when he first spoke of the danger of Trident being made redundant by cyber attack. And we've also heard of the danger of underwater drones, making Trident submarines no longer undetectable. Now we know that these technologies are being developed by NATO, by China and by Russia. Admiral Lord West described these as nonsense, much as in the way that you did, Mr. Dunn, this evening. I'm glad to hear today that the Defence Select Committee has reported that it is written to BAE Systems, the manufacturer of the submarines today, to ask for information about those threats and dangers. So it's not la-la land, it is something that has to be taken very seriously. We don't want to spend money on something that would just be disqualified by the advance of technology. So the arguments for then, jobs, well, that's a very serious issue, but not in my opinion, or of many, a reason for the continuation of weapons of mass destruction by Britain. Defence diversification is crucial, and we know that US plans which have produced base realignment and closure programs very effectively are there to be used. Status, Catherine has touched upon that. Let's just mention deterrence, this idea of deterrence. In my opinion, why base our national security on a will they, won't they, press the button game of bluff? I think that it's irresponsible folly, and it's the endless repeating of an unprovable mantra. It's a deterrent. So, insurance policy. Can I remind you that insurance policies pay out after the accident or disaster has happened? Insurance policies do not prevent that accident or disaster from happening. And finally, to come to the point about the uncertain world. Of course we live in an uncertain world, so why don't we then take steps to make sure that the worst nightmares that we fear, the worst outcomes, can be avoided? Let's not go down a path which will ensure that those tragedies will happen, that we follow a course leading to greater proliferation and inevitable use by accident or design. So let's make sure our policies break this nuclear cycle. Let's not take the worst elements of the 20th century forward with us. Let's not waste money on suicidal, genocidal weapons. Let's meet the real challenges of 21st century security in a way that will secure the future of the human race, not ensure its destruction. Thank you.